Gentlemen, I am going to be very happy to go through and pull up an updated 2023 mock draft here. Not really a mock draft, obviously. We are drafting on Underdog here. So this is actually a $10 buy-in, $1 million prize pool. I'm sure a lot of y'all have already drafted in the big board tournament. I actually had one of these yesterday, and we picked at 12 yesterday as well. So we have some familiarity with the pick. Yesterday, we ended up, I believe, going Austin Ekeler, Saquon Barkley at the 1-2 turn. We'll see what we end up with here. I mean, it was the first draft that I think I've taken Ekeler in this offseason, because when these drafts first opened up on Underdog, Austin Ekeler was going around pick 5, pick 6. I thought that was a very bad price point, but if he's going to be falling to us at 12, honestly, we may end up going Ekeler again. But we have a lot of news. We have Miles Sanders in Carolina. We have Juju Smith-Schuster in New England. We have DJ Moore in Chicago. We have so much that we're going to be looking at in this draft. So as I pull this up, make sure you drop a like on this live stream. And if you want to get into a draft with us, if you want to get in a draft in the public lobby, you can hop into an Underdog best ball draft today in 99% of states. I believe the only states that don't have Underdog are Nevada, Washington, Louisiana, and Michigan. Maybe there's one more that I'm forgetting, but I think it's pretty much just those 4. And when you sign up with promo code FLOCK, you are going to get your first deposit matched dollar for dollar up to $100. And you can have some fun with us in these drafts on the live stream. So we have a run on wide receivers happening here. So that isn't great for us. I mean, like we said, don't really like the 12th pick because you are kind of boxed into a corner here. Very similar to the draft that we had yesterday. While I don't love the idea of having to double tap the running back position, we're going to go ahead. We are going to take Austin Ekeler and Saquon Barkley. I would just have a very difficult time taking Garrett Wilson over either one of these running backs. Now, of course, if we're going to be looking at Austin Ekeler, the man is granted permission to request a trade or look for a trade. In reality, I think this is just posturing between the two parties, because Austin Ekeler should, in my mind, get a new contract with the Los Angeles Chargers. They are reluctant to pay him because this is a running back that was drafted back in, or he wasn't even drafted, undrafted free agent, but back in that 2017 draft class. So Austin Ekeler isn't necessarily a spring chicken. We know that NFL teams don't like paying running backs, especially older RBs. So the Chargers have been reluctant to give Ekeler the contract extension that he wants, and he probably deserves. He was phenomenal this past year. So it's an interesting spot to be in. I'd imagine that both sides probably eventually work out a deal here. Clearly, you want Austin Ekeler on the Los Angeles Chargers, an elite level offense that at the same time, you're going to get a ton of targets out of the backfield. So I'm really hoping that Ekeler finds his way back to Los Angeles, but we don't know that for guaranteed. What we do know is you are going to have Saquon Barkley this next season in New York. Gets it with the franchise tag, so you're in a comfortable spot there. Brett says, no Amon-Ra St. Brown, question mark. No. I mean, in the majority of these Underdog drafts I have been going through, I have been trying to double tap the wide receiver position in the first and second round. I just have a very difficult time taking someone like Amon-Ra St. Brown over Austin Ekeler, who was the running back 1 last season, or Saquon Barkley here. I mean, I completely understand that we want to be building around those wide receivers early, particularly on Underdog. It's just difficult with the opportunity cost of passing up on one of those truly top level running backs. Like, if we're just going to be looking at how draft boards have broken down up until this point, I mean, if we were to go through and say, take a wide receiver, and of course this doesn't matter too much, but just for reference, we'd be taking about the wide receiver 9, wide receiver 10 off the board if we decided to go with the Amon-Ra St. Brown or Garrett Wilson. Whereas at running back, we're taking the running back 3 and running back 4. Now, like I said, it doesn't matter too much, but just to show you how this draft board has been skewed based off of the majority of people realizing, yeah, you probably want to grab your wide receivers early on Underdog because these guys go off the board so quickly. Now, Max says, best fit besides the Chargers for Ekeler, question mark. So pulling this up, I think it's very difficult to find a team that we would like Austin Ekeler on more than the Los Angeles Chargers. In my mind, Chargers, the best case scenario for Austin Ekeler. I think you could end up seeing Ekeler possibly go to the Miami Dolphins. If they were to move him, I think Miami would be a very good landing spot. You could possibly, just possibly, see a team. Now, you're not going to be seeing them trade him inside the same division. So it'd actually have to probably be over the NFC. Maybe the Eagles go after Eckler. I mean, the Commanders, possibly. I know a lot of people are saying Bears. I don't see why the Bears would go from being the worst team in the NFL to thinking they need to address the running back position. I feel like really only going to see contenders go that direction. Yeah, there aren't too many good landing spots for Austin Eckler right now. I mean, you're really, really just hoping that he goes out there and re-signs with or extends with the Los Angeles Chargers. Max says, is there any concern for regression? Of course there's concern for regression for Austin Eckler. I mean, if nobody thought Eckler was going to regress, he'd be the number 1 overall pick in fantasy. Like, the regression is priced in to his pick here at 12, because if he was going to repeat last season, Austin Eckler would most likely be the number 1 player off the board. I mean, Austin Eckler won Best Ball Mania last year, won $2 million. Okay, so Mizit in the trap took JT and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Goes Justin Fields here. So I actually think we get very lucky to be able to double tap the wide receiver position. We're going to go Deebo Samuel and DeAndre Hopkins. I'm assuming that this team's going to decide to take DJ Moore on the way back around as well. I actually prefer Najee Harris over a couple of the wide receivers in this range. But the issue is just when we start running back, we're going to be in a position where we don't really have the option to just take, oh, I like Najee Harris here and the guaranteed touches that we are seeing, the guaranteed volume. You can't do it. You have to go wide receiver, because the running back options that we're going to have later on in the draft, I actually will like as well. Whereas wide receiver, if we continue to take RBs here, we're just going to have nobody that we like later on, and we're going to have no other option but to start drafting these guys. Okay. Now, Avon says this is going to be the hardest year for fantasy football ever. I will say last year, I mean, obviously we had phenomenal results. I think I was the only person on the planet to win multiple high-stakes drafts in the same season on Underdog. Won the Big Dog, won the Bulldog 2, I got 16th place in Best Ball Mania. I want to say if you look at the overall year we had last season in the aggregate, we probably had a better year than anybody on Underdog Fantasy, that anybody you're ever going to find. Won $150,000, but more importantly, took down multiple high-stakes tournaments. And yes, I will admit that drafts this year do seem much more difficult than drafts last year. Last year, I felt the board was very easy to navigate. Keep in mind, I drafted over 700 teams last year. So by the time we get to August, I'm like a well-oiled machine with these Underdog drafts. Here, I'm only, I think, like 30, 40 drafts in this offseason. So it's a little more difficult for me to have a fundamental understanding of the board, especially before we have the NFL draft as well. But I'll admit, yeah, I think that drafts this year are harder. I mean, last year was super easy. Last year, we were getting Patrick Mahomes in the 5th round. We were getting Josh Jacobs in the 7th round. We were getting Jalen Waddle in the 4th round. My 3 most drafted players, I mean, I felt like they were just auto picks with where they were going. I don't really feel like that you have too many auto picks here at this point. I mean, it's a lot harder when you can't just take Patrick Mahomes in the 5th round, that's for sure. Max says elite quarterback prices are killing me. I'm right there with you, my friend. Like, I don't think I've drafted a single share of Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, or Jalen Hurts this season. Whereas last year, I was able to take an elite level quarterback in every single draft. This year, I haven't taken a single one. Instead, we've been loading up on a lot of rookies that I think have upside. I mean, we've been loading up on a lot of Will Levis, Anthony Richardson all offseason. Just these quarterbacks that are probably going to get some draft capital and at the same time have some rushing upside. But I don't want to just keep on saying that because I don't want too many people to just follow in that direction. I mean, we've already seen Anthony Richardson's price skyrocket since the combine. Hurricane Lane says, what do you think of Evans Hole's profile? Let me pull this up. It hasn't been a player that I've heard talked about going relatively high in the NFL draft. I mean, this position in particular at running back, draft capital matters so much, and that the number one thing for RB in general is just going to be finding someone that actually gets opportunity. And yeah, looking at this, he runs a 4.47, 5'10", 209. So has the size that we like. And I mean, at the same time, ridiculous pass catcher in college. I mean, how many receptions did the man come away with? 55 receptions this past year. Oh my gosh. Where does NFL Mock Draft Database have him going right now? Yeah, because he checks a lot of the boxes that we look for. Now, of course, if he ends up like going in the 7th round in the NFL draft, he's just almost off our board. I mean, at that point, he's like a 4th round rookie running back pick that we can just go through and take a shot on. But yeah, so right now you have him as 185 with the projection on NFL mock draft database. So they have him as like a 6th round NFL draft pick. If that were to be the case, it's so hard for a running back to ever see opportunity in that range that I'm probably not going to draft him a ton. But you're right. I mean, if we're looking at the profile, he checks a ton of boxes. Bobcat coming out with a massive donation. Thank you so much, my friend. I will get to that in just 1 second, but let's prepare to make some picks. Okay, so Aaron Jones goes. Kyle Pitts off the board. I've actually been taking a little bit of Kyle Pitts this year, just assuming that Atlanta can't be as bad as they were last season. So going back to why we took wide receivers in the last round, I mean, I feel like this is just a position where if we're going to be looking at the wide receivers available, and I know this isn't everything as well. I want to reiterate that this is not the reason I'm doing it, but just to illustrate the point of how this draft has gone so far. If we were to take Hollywood Brown, we'd be taking the 33rd wide receiver off the board compared to Dalvin Cook as RB15. Same thing, Jahmyr Gibbs, RB16 here. I think we're actually going to go ahead. We're going to take the running backs. In my mind, this is why drafting at the end of the first round this year in these underdog drafts is so damn difficult compared to if you get a first round pick. I mean, an early first round pick, because if we go through, if we look at what you could have done if you are picking at, say, 3, for example, like let's look at that team at 3. You have the luxury of being able to go through and take Jamar Chase at the very top of the draft, building your team around a truly elite level wide receiver. Then at the 2-3 turn, you still get an option of grabbing another very strong option of the wide receiver position. There with Devonta Smith, or maybe you decide to go Chris Olave. I mean, really either or, you're feeling comfortable at wide receiver. In my mind, what I would have probably done is I probably would have gone either Smith or Olave, and then on the way back around, take a running back like Derrick Henry in round 3. And then you're still getting so many guaranteed running back touches and a crap ton of running back upside as well. If you were able to take Derrick Henry round 3, Najee Harris round 4, but you don't have to pay that high of a price tag for it. And you're getting those elite level wide receivers at the same time. In my mind, being able to pick at the top half of the first round this year is just a straight up cheat code compared to how the board falls to you if you're at pick 11, pick 12, pick 10. I really don't like selecting in that range. But Bobcat, again, with the donation, thank you, says, what do you think of Houston's and Atlanta's backfield? Neither team has added any running backs, and both Dameon Pierce and Tyler Algier just need to avoid their teams drafting running backs in order for them to start this next season. 100%. I actually think that both running backs are very reasonable price points. It's actually funny. If you're going to be looking at both Dameon Pierce and Tyler Algier, they had comparable rookie seasons. I mean, the difference is Dameon Pierce had the immediate breakout. Dameon Pierce, I mean, if you're looking at his game log, front-loaded his production compared to Tyler Algier, obviously came on at the very end of the season. But both running backs, I mean, can catch the ball out of the backfield. It's not like they're elite level pass catchers, but they get the job done in that regard, and they flashed as year 1 players. Now, keep in mind, both running backs were day 3 NFL draft picks, so there's always the outside chance that the team has no commitment to them, and then they go out there and they invest into the position in either free agency or the NFL draft. But just like you're saying, they've already dodged the free agency running back bullet. Now, of course, there's still the possibility that they go out there and they bring in Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott. In reality, I'm probably not too worried about that because both the Atlanta Falcons and Houston Texans, in my mind, have proven to be very bad teams that I don't think are going to be productive this upcoming season. So if they're not going to be productive this upcoming season, in my mind, it's like, why are we going to go out there and why are we going to be bringing in a running back that was drafted in 2016 or 2017? So it's a very interesting position to be in, but if we're going to be looking at where these players go in drafts, if you can get Dameon Pierce in the 6th round, I'm all about it. And that's where his ADP is. And the same thing, if you can go through and get Tyler Algier in the double-digit rounds, I think that, yes, you still have some risk with those players, but you have risk as well as if you're taking Treylon Burks. You know what I mean? You have risk if you're taking Kadarius Toney. So I really love this price point of Dameon Pierce if you're getting him down here at pick 77. And I wasn't even a Dameon Pierce fan last year. And I had to sit here and take my L. I mean, once Dameon Pierce rose up and he was being drafted in like the 5th, 6th round of these underdog drafts last offseason, I was screaming, okay, I would never take Dameon Pierce in this range. Dameon Pierce is a horrible value, blah, blah, blah. Well, Dameon Pierce kind of crushed it. And that was as a 6th round pick his rookie season. He comes out, proves that, hey, he's pretty good. He crushed it his rookie year. And now you're getting him at a cheaper cost when possibly the Houston Texans offense can be even better. So going back, I know this is a long-winded way to say it. I actually don't mind at all Dameon Pierce at his price. I mean, I would even draft him in round 6. I'd draft him a full round ahead of where he went in this one. Okay. So let's swing this back around. And ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be put in a very, very difficult position here. We may end up having to take a 5th running back before our 3rd wide receiver. I mean, Miles Sanders obviously rising up these draft boards if we're going to be looking at the landing spot with Carolina. And at the same time, we have him on the thumbnail, so we possibly need to go ahead and take Miles Sanders here. Okay, we were trying to talk someone into taking Sanders. We obviously don't want to be taking him. I think we are locking in Jordan Addison here. Don't have to think about that twice. If we take Miles Sanders, it's going to be very difficult for us to even draft another running back after this. But the thing is, if we're going to be looking at the opportunity cost, Miles Sanders is going to be the starting running back on his team. That's pretty much a guarantee with the lack of draft capital you have from the Carolina Panthers, combined with the fact that they just went out there and gave the man a decent amount of guaranteed money. So you have Sanders locked in as a running back starter this next year, compared to Cortland Sutton, Jacoby Myers, Zay Flowers, Brandon Cooks. So this team desperately needs wide receiver help. We have Deebo Samuel, DeAndre Hopkins, and Jordan Addison. But from a raw points perspective, Miles Sanders will score so many more points than any other wide receiver in this range that I feel like we have to go ahead, and I think we have to take Miles Sanders here. Not even to mention, like we said, that the man is on the thumbnail of this live stream. So if he's on the thumbnail of this live stream, it's going to be an easy tie break. We just have to go ahead and we have to draft him. Oh, brutal, brutal, brutal. Okay, so let's swing down. We have Tua going 89, Darren Waller 88. So, of course, at this point, we are just sending up a prayer saying, please have wide receivers fall to us. We need wide receivers falling. Hopefully these teams start taking running back, which a lot of them do need RB, so I definitely think that is a possibility here. But, of course, it's just no guarantee. David Montgomery going off the board at 91. Please let me know in the live chat, who would you rather have in fantasy? Would you rather have Miles Sanders or David Montgomery at this point? Sanders going over to Carolina, David Montgomery getting a pretty nice contract to go over to the Detroit Lions. Let me pull up the exact amount of money that we had guaranteed for both of these players. Okay, so here with David Montgomery, you're looking at $11 million guaranteed. You're running behind an elite offensive line as well. I'd say that David Montgomery definitely in the better offense in Detroit, but the thing is Miles Sanders just has less competition overall, where you have DeAndre Swift in Detroit and you have nobody in Carolina. And yeah, Miles Sanders ends up getting $13 million guaranteed, so just slightly more than Montgomery, but in a similar range. Okay, so the Hex says Montgomery. Drums for Dave says Montgomery. Al Frazier, happy to see you out here, my friend, says Sanders. Sanders, Montgomery. As of now, it's as about even as it gets. I mean, obviously, Montgomery's able to go through and replicate what you had from Jamal Williams this past year. David Montgomery is the no-brainer selection between the two of them. In my mind, I just think we probably see some regression from the Detroit Lions offense. It's hard to project any running back to have that kind of touchdown efficiency there. So I don't know. James Cook, Rashad White off the board. Thank God. We need to, these running backs in my mind are the best values, but it's very, very, very difficult for us to ever go through and say, okay, well, yeah, Alvin Kamara is the best value. Let me go ahead and let's take Alvin Kamara at 108 when we're literally rolling with Deebo Samuel, DeAndre Hopkins, and Jordan Addison at wide receiver. The Hex says, haven't seen the ceiling of the Detroit Lions offense just yet. Let me pull this up. I will agree that on paper, the Detroit Lions offense can get better, right? You add in Jamison Williams. You have a decent amount of draft capital to work with this year. And the team was very good this past year. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, incredibly young. You add in David Montgomery to replace Jamal Williams, blah, 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 blah. In my mind, they are the Detroit Lions at the end of the day. They are a dysfunctional franchise top to bottom. We've seen that proven for decades now. And they were number 5 in the NFL in scoring this past season. They were behind Kansas City, Philadelphia, Buffalo, and Dallas. Those were the only teams that scored more points than the Detroit Lions. Okay. I think that we are locking in Lance. Lance is going to be the easiest selection ever here. The question is just what wide receiver do we want to take? Or do we even want to go wide receiver? Do we possibly pivot over to tight end with Pat Freiermuth? Wide receiver 52 or tight end 10? I think we're actually going to go Freiermuth. I really like the Freiermuth value. We have to go Lance. It's a no-brainer. In my mind, Lance is quarterback with an elite level ceiling. And at the same time, if we're going to be looking at what we have with Pat Freiermuth, I think that you're looking at a tight end that saw a consistent rise with his target volume and his overall receiving yards per game from his rookie to his second year. Pretty much everything you could ever ask from a first and second year tight end, Pat Freiermuth gave you over the past 2 seasons. We know historically speaking that players at that position at that age just never produce. So the fact that we had some level of production from him, it does get me excited. And I think it's a very reasonable price point to be paying here at pick 109, even if we're in desperate need of a wide receiver. Andrew says, Mason-wise, Geno Smith going as the quarterback 18 when his entire offense is the same. Okay, let me pull this up for you, my friend. First thing I want to address is, in my mind, it's going to be difficult for Geno Smith to be better this next year than he was this past season. Now defensive coordinators have tape on Geno Smith. Now that they're going to be able to actually go through and create a game plan around stopping him. And if we were looking at Geno Smith, he was about the quarterback 11 from a points per game perspective this past year. I mean, he was very comparable to what you had with some other options such as Daniel Jones, Tua, Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott. You have Tyler Lockett another year older. Geno Smith's going to be, 33, 34. The rushing upside just simply isn't going to be there for Geno Smith this next season. So I don't know. I know a lot of people have been banging the drum saying Geno Smith is some phenomenal value and maybe just the boring pick is the right pick. But in my mind, I'm going to go after a quarterback that I think has significantly more rushing upside, aka significantly more fantasy football upside with Trey Lance there at 108. But this is the worst case scenario, ladies and gentlemen. We are getting a massive run on wide receiver here. I mean, if we're looking at what's going to be available to us on the way back around, we may have Odell, Sky Moore to pick from. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be an ugly situation. I think we made a mistake this past. I think this draft was a mistake. Unless Jordan Addison breaks out to be a phenomenal player year one, Deebo Samuel, DeAndre Hopkins have strong seasons, we are heavily relying on these 3 wide receivers to get us there. And a couple of random spikes from guys later on, which is a very difficult ask. Russell Wilson, Allen Lazard go off the board at 124, 125. Okay, come on. Take Kenneth Gainwell. You know you want Kenneth Gainwell. Take him. Come on. He's going to be the pass catcher. Rashad Penny, first and second down back. Kenneth Gainwell, pass catcher with upside. Rodgers, I'm fine if you wanted to go Rodgers. Okay, come on, Manavon. You know you want Kenneth Gainwell. You know you want him. Or Alexander Madison. Or Kareem Hunt. Hell, maybe Kareem Hunt goes to Miami. Kareem Hunt goes to Miami and you get 2017 Kareem Hunt all over again. Or 2018 Kareem Hunt. Phenomenal pick. You're 127. Come on. Alexander Madison, top 3 upside every single week. Top 3 running back upside. Or you can just auto draft Kenneth Gainwell here. Dawson Knox, okay, you can take Dawson Knox. I'm fine with that. All right, RJ Todd. Kyler Murray, okay. Richie, you're rocking with Ramondre Stevenson, Cam Akers here, my friend. Gainwell's screaming your name here. Screaming your name. Greg Dulce. All right, well, we're fine with it. We're fine with it. No soup for you, Odell Beckham Jr. Me's in the trap, Cole Kmet. Okay. Kenneth Gainwell does not go. But anyway, we're going to go ahead. We're going to take wide receivers. I actually would probably rather have Gallup over Sky Moore, even though Michael Gallup is an ADP 16 rounds later. Whenever I draft like over 700 of these teams, very rarely am I ever going through and quote unquote reaching on a player's 16 picks in ADP. Would I be crazy to take Michael Gallup over Sky Moore here? Obviously, there's a chance that you have McCole Hardman and Juju Smith-Schuster both out of Kansas City this next season. Sky Moore going into year 2. Possibly Sky Moore is someone that we can get excited about. Let me know who you're going with. I'm definitely going with both these guys over Romeo Doubs or Isaiah Hodgins. Let me know. Am I crazy to take Gallup over Sky Moore here? Please, please, please let me know. Okay. Sam says not crazy at all. We can go Gallup. Okay. Let's go ahead and let's take Michael Gallup here. Wide receiver 5. CJ Stroud, 134. Okay. Oh, dear God, ladies and gentlemen. We are relying on some rookie wide receiver breakouts here. This is not the prettiest situation we can find ourselves in. This is brutal here. This is brutal. Okay, the Hex says Gallup over Moore as well. I mean, if we're looking at Gallup, I actually drafted him a decent amount this past year, which obviously was a horrendous selection looking back on it. And if I'm going to be trying to come up with excuses for Michael Gallup here, I think the excuse is kind of simple. You had a player that was coming off a short rehab of a torn ACL. We've seen in years past that betting off of the short ACL rehab usually is not a winning bet. Usually we should be going through and trying to wait an extra season for that player to be fully recovered. Michael Gallup still has a decent amount of guaranteed money in Dallas. There's still a pretty big hole at wide receiver 2 there. Obviously, you have a lot of questions surrounding, okay, does DeAndre Hopkins go over to the Dallas Cowboys? And if that were to be the case, then we probably like our DeAndre Hopkins selection at the 3-4 turn, whereas in reality, Michael Gallup is just complete toast here at 133. But interesting spot to be in. Okay, Elijah Mitchell, 139. Alexander Madison, 136. So we've been trying to sell Kenneth Gainwell here. We've been trying to get Kenneth Gainwell off the board for about 2 rounds now, and it's just not happening. Devin Achane here at 140. Very interesting to see him go before Gainwell. I know that a lot of people are very excited about Rashad Penny at this point. You see Rashad Penny going about 30 picks before Kenneth Gainwell. I'll say a couple things with this front. I believe Rashad Penny has $600,000 guaranteed this next season. And if we're going to be comparing that to Kenneth Gainwell, I mean, the team investment is about the same into both running backs. With Rashad Penny's coming off a torn ACL. Now, keep in mind, I believe it was like week 3 that he tore it, or maybe week 4, but still early on in the season. To go along with this, Rashad Penny, at really no point of his NFL career, showed his passing down upside. I mean, back at San Diego State coming out of school, I believe he had a target share hovering around 12%. So Rashad Penny actually did catch the ball in college, but he has never done so at the NFL level. So in my mind, it actually makes a lot of sense, the pairing of Rashad Penny and Kenneth Gainwell. But Kenneth Gainwell, we've seen be used at the goal line in Philadelphia. We've seen him draw targets out of the backfield as well, where maybe Gainwell's going to be the player getting the high value touches, where Rashad Penny's going to be seeing like the first and second down grinder touches in between the 20-yard line. So really have no access to high value touches. So if we're going to be baking in the cost of these two players, Rashad Penny at 111 versus Gainwell 141. I actually probably prefer Gainwell 141. Okay. Now, of course, not a big Gainwell fan here. Let me see how many drafts I've actually taken Kenneth Gainwell in. Okay. Derek Carr off the board. Okay, completed. I've taken Kenneth Gainwell in a total of 0 drafts this offseason. So maybe we're going through and making an argument. Oh, you kind of want Kenneth Gainwell 30 picks behind Rashad Penny if you can get him. And maybe it's a fake argument to be making if I have not taken Gainwell in a single one. But still, it is what it is. Josh says, hey guys, on Underdog, when it says one flex spot, does that mean super flex or wide receiver, running back, tight end? So the majority of Underdog drafts, that flex spot is actually just going to be a regular player. Underdog will launch some super flex draft contests later on in the offseason. At least they have over the past 3 years, or 2 years at the very minimum. But that will clearly say super flex on it, my friend. It'll be like a big board, but super flex. And then at that point, you'll see that quarterbacks are obviously just being drafted in a completely different range. So yeah, the majority of Underdog drafts are 1 QB, but they will have super flex ones. You'll know exactly which ones are that though. Okay, so let's swing over. I actually kind of like a few of these names that are on the board right now. So far, quarterback, we have Lance stacked up with Deebo Samuel. Running back, we have Eckler, Saquon, Dalvin, Jahmyr Gibbs, Miles Sanders. Wide receiver, definitely the weak point of the team. We have Deebo Samuel, DeAndre Hopkins, Jordan Addison, Josh Downs, Michael Gallup. Tight end, we have Pat Frymuth. Ashton says, my question is, who cares about carries inside their team's own 20? I get the red zone, but don't get inside their own. Yeah, I mean, my friend, I got you. It was probably a bad way that I worded it. But Jordan Love going 154. To be honest with you, I'm not a big Jordan Love guy. Oh my gosh, this is exactly what we wanted to see. We're going to get Alec Pierce falling to us. With Alec Pierce, of course, we can't sit here and act like, oh, okay, he's guaranteed to be some phenomenal wide receiver this next year. He flashed year one. He's going to be the deep threat in Indianapolis. So specifically in best ball, you may get some random spike weeks. If we're going to be looking at the level of commitment into him, he was the 2nd round draft pick in last year's NFL draft by the Indianapolis Colts. You possibly get a quarterback upgrade. Possibly Indianapolis ends up getting Bryce Young. We don't know exactly how the draft board's going to shake out. So I actually really like the selections of Bryce Young and Alec Pierce at 157. I feel like we actually get very lucky with that, and that we can get a few usable weeks out of Alec Pierce this next season, which we so desperately need with this team build. Okay. Chris says, you need some Gainwell exposure, need better wide receiver. Is Antonio Brown available? Chris, I don't know if you're a troll, my friend, but if you were going to troll the channel, if you can come out here and show us that you won multiple high stakes drafts on Underdog Fantasy last year, if you can come out and show us that you won the big dog draft for 100,000, that you won the Bulldog draft too for 20,000, and you also got 16th place in Best Ball Mania, here you can come out here and you can tell us what to do, my friend. But until then, you are just sadly a troll, and you can continue to do you. I'm happy that we are able to provide you some entertainment this fine Saturday morning. Okay, now we have Marcus Valdes-Scantling going 164, Tyquan Thornton 160. I actually don't mind the Tyquan Thornton selection at all either. If you're going to be looking at Tyquan Thornton, very similar to Alec Pierce, where this is a wide receiver that has pretty much the guaranteed job security this next season. 2nd round draft pick last year. The New England Patriots essentially just take him as a field stretching option. Be damn near impossible in a traditional redraft league to ever figure out when you could start Tyquan Thornton, when you could possibly start Alec Pierce. But specifically in best ball, these are players that maybe give you 3-4 usable weeks that they actually can slide in, which is valuable at this point when you're being drafted in the same round as guys like Jimmy Garoppolo, Kenny Pickett, Matthew Stafford. Okay. Now, Tyler Higbee goes 166. I feel like one of my dumbest picks this offseason has probably been, I've gone through and drafted Tyler Higbee over and over and over again whenever he's been falling to this range. And it's probably the worst thing that I'm doing, if I'm being honest. I mean, in my mind, my little monkey brain tells me that Tyler Higbee, like in the 14th, 15th round, is so much better than like taking one of those 11th round players in Dawson Knox, Greg Dulcich, Cole Kmet. I kind of view them as the same level option, just one of them being 3-4 rounds of discount compared to the other. But I'm probably just being idiotic when we've been making that decision. Keyshawn Boutte, 169. Okay, Keyshawn Boutte, obviously, probably the biggest follower since this draft contest is opened. Roschon Johnson, a big riser. Very difficult for us to take a running back unless we think that, okay, this is the best value ever. Based on the running back investment that we've had, if it was going to be an 18-round underdog draft, it would be laughable to even bring up the possibility of drafting another one of these guys. But of course, if like Sean Tucker ends up falling to us and it's a 20-round draft, we do have a little more flexibility with how we can build out this roster. And it's not the end of the world if we decide to grab a 6th running back. It's just going to primarily depend on the value and who's going to be available to us. Okay. Now, Michael Mayer going 173. Tim Patrick, 174. So Claypool, big time follower, obviously, when we have DJ Moore coming over, even though the Chicago Bears just gave up the 32nd overall pick to go out there and get Chase Claypool. A wide receiver that's very difficult to imagine that you're getting much, if anything, from him this next year. Okay. Mac Jones. Here Claypool goes. Okay, so there's no way I'm taking Sean Tucker here, is there? Is there a reason that Sean Tucker has fallen 2 rounds in ADP? Just because we'll have to take a wide receiver, let's queue up Adam Thielen. And actually, we'll probably go Mike Gesicki as well, right? Adam Thielen, no idea what situation he'll find himself in this next year. Literally no idea. Probably a wasted pick, but so would be Curtis Samuel, John Mechie, Paris Campbell. If you're drafting around the wide receiver 80, you have to draft them with the expectation that it is going to be a wasted selection. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take Adam Thielen and Mike Gesicki back-to-back here. With Gesicki, I'm comfortable with the landing spot in New England. New England needs pass catchers. Gesicki's kind of like a pseudo big slot wide receiver with tight end eligibility. It could easily just be the Jonnu Smith situation all over again, but we'll figure it out. Okay. Now let's go through, scroll down this entire board. And yeah, it would have been just difficult for us to go through and take Sean Tucker there, even if we really liked the value we'd be getting. Paris Campbell, 184. I feel like there is a teardrop in my mind after we get, I would say, past like the DJ Chark level player of 171, where it seems like every wide receiver therefore after is just a complete dart throw, a complete shot in the dark, where you're going to be happy if you end up coming away with like 2 usable weeks from any of these guys. So usually I don't like taking wide receiver in this range, but in this draft in particular, we put ourselves in a position where we don't even have an option. Ashton says, would you like it if they kept it at 20 rounds after the NFL draft? Honestly, probably. I actually probably prefer the 18-round drafts. I feel like 18-round drafts, roster construction is going to be significantly more important, and you have to live by your rules, whereas 20 rounds, having those 2 extra rounds in my mind just gives you so much more flexibility and how you can go through and you can construct your team where, in my mind, I like having the more so rigid structure in the 18 rounds than the 20 rounders. And also, once we get to round like 19, 20, if you've noticed, I've just been shutting off the live stream because it's like, what the hell are we doing down here? McCole Hardman going 190. Hurricane Lane says, lower draft capital for Tucker currently in the early 4th round on mock draft database. Yeah, you're really just hoping that Sean Tucker is able to sneak into the 3rd. So if I'm pulling this up, right now he has an ADP on NFL mock draft database of 106. But still, in my mind, this is a player that checks a ton of the boxes that we're looking for. I think he has a shot at being a day 2 NFL draft pick. Sean Tucker, obviously a great pass catcher. Sean Tucker as well, in my mind, actually improved his draft stock with what we got from the NFL Combine, with him coming in at 5'9", 207, having a BMI over 30. I really like that. And we know he's going to be blazing fast at his pro day. So I actually like a lot of the boxes that are checked by Sean Tucker. It's just, can he go on day 2 of the NFL draft? Okay. Sean Tucker, 186. So it looks like nobody is interested in Singletary whatsoever. We have no idea where Singletary will be this next year, but still funny to see Devin Singletary falling behind guys like Chuba Hubbard, Kondre Miller. Okay, I think I know what we're going to do. Robert Woods goes 199. I actually really like the Robert Woods selection. If you're looking at the contract that he got for Houston, I'm very confident in Robert Woods actually playing this upcoming season, which is something that's very difficult to say about pretty much any wide receiver in this range. Like, if we were to go back, honestly, I would probably say Robert Woods is a better pick over Adam Thielen at this point. Now, the thing is, you have to keep in mind, okay, well, if we take Adam Thielen, there's still a shot we get Robert Woods on the way back around, where that's just not going to be a possibility with some of these other names. Okay, we're going to go ahead. We're going to take Noah Fant. I actually really like Noah Fant, the talent. Of course, the issue is don't really know what the situation is going to be this upcoming season. And He hasn't done much over the past few years. And we're going to go Will Levis as well. I've actually been drafting Will Levis in almost every single one of these bad boys. And that I think he's going to be a top 10 NFL draft pick. I think he should get a crack at a starting job year one. And then if we're going to be also looking at the rushing upside, while it's definitely not Anthony Richardson level rushing upside, he can still actually go out there. And I wouldn't be too surprised if he had 350 rushing yards year one there. So it's a tough spot to be in when our quarterback room is Lance, Bryce Young, and Will Levis. But I honestly don't mind taking just another guaranteed starter if we have someone available to us in the 20th round turn, whereas we're in a range where guys like Michael Carter are going off the board at this point. I feel like we don't have to take another tight end when we have Gesicki, Noah Fant, as well as Pat Frymuth. And then we're just going to have to take one more wide receiver. Definitely we have to take one more wide receiver, but we'll see. Now, OJ says, Mason, how do you feel about Rodgers' ADP? What's very difficult about Rodgers in my mind is just you're looking at a quarterback with legitimately no upside whatsoever. No rushing upside whatsoever. So he can still be very successful from an NFL standpoint for the New York Jets, but at the end of the day, it may not necessarily work out in terms of a fantasy football standpoint if you're never going to be able to get even 150 rushing yards from the man. Okay. But I think we're probably going to cut it here. I've been taking some players in the 19th, 20th round that I'm trying not to show too much on YouTube because I would rather try to get those guys at low ownership, and I don't want them to just start going in every single one of these drafts. But let me swing this around. Of course, if you want to get in our next draft, we're going to be doing these very often. Go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Link in the live chat. Link in the description. Promo code FLOCK, 100% a pause and match. Available in damn near every state. This was $1 million draft contest, $10 buy-in. There's literally nothing more fun than this. But real quick, before we leave, we have a donation coming out from Simon. Thank you, my friend. Says, made 2 trades, moved Eckler, the 202, 204, 207 for the 102 and Ezekiel Elliott. So if we're going to be looking at the 102, if it's a super flex, it's most likely going to be either CJ Stroud, Bryce Young. If it's going to be a 1 quarterback league, it's going to be your choice between JSN and Jahmyr Gibbs. Move Zeke, the 205 and a future second for Najee Harris. Love this second deal. And you're saying expecting the 101 to take a quarterback, they really need it. Yeah, you crushed it. I don't love the first trade unless we were able to pull off that Ezekiel Elliott one. But since we were able to parlay the first deal into the Najee Harris trade, phenomenal, especially if somehow we get Bijan Robinson falling to us at 2. That'd just be great. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate y'all. Hope that you have a great day and hope that we get to see you with the live stream probably on Wednesday. I am moving this week, so I don't know exactly when I'll be able to go live. But thank you again so much, everyone. I really hope you have a great weekend.